Okay, hi. Okay, we're continuing on with page 37 of Refuge Recovery, a Buddhist Path to Recovery from Addiction by Noah Levine. Here we go. Light, let there be light. Okay. At the same time, we're in the chapter part called right after forgiveness. We're still in forgiveness. At the same time, we also understand cause and effect. And we know that everyone is fully responsible for their actions. We don't have to punish. Everyone is already fully accountable for what they have done. Some actions may not be forgivable, but all actors are. There is always a possibility of compassion for the actor, the person whose own suffering has spilled onto other people. There is always potential for mercy toward the suffering and confused person who hurts another. To recover, we must clearly see what we have been in a lot. To recover, we must clearly see that we have been in a lot of pain for a long time and that our pain has affected others. Then we can begin to see that the people toward whom we have been holding resentment had also been in pain and that they had spilled their pain onto us. This allows us to separate the person from the action and finally see the confused human being behind his or her hurtful act. This may be the hardest part, not associating the people with their actions, but seeing them as confused human beings trying their best and failing miserably, just as we may have at times. Most of us have found that having a compassionate attitude towards everyone in our life is incredibly challenging. It may take years of trying and failing to come to a real sense of this understanding. And so for me, it definitely has and continues to evolve. Excuse me, back to this. That's a common experience because forgiveness can't be forced. Having held on to anger and resentment for so long, we have allowed that reaction to become our habit. And habits take time and intentional action to break. Through forgiveness, we retrain our mind and heart to respond in a new and more useful way. By separating the actor from the action, we get to the root of the suffering, both caused and experienced. Be meditating on that all night. This is a counterintuitive process. Our biological instinct is to respond to all forms of pain with aversion, anger, hatred, and resentment, the basic survival instinct of the human animal. It works quite well to protect us from external harm, yet it seems to create an even more harmful inner experience. For me, when in the journey that I'm in, I know I'm getting better, but I'm striving to understand about bottling things up. The difference between bottling things up, like I can recognize projection and I can recognize hurt in others, and I can, I always often fall back to don't take it personal, get yourself out of it, observe it, and I'm still striving to understand if by doing that, am I being a compassionate person or am I bottling it up? You know? I guess it all depends on how much change you see in the person that you are being compassionate towards. And it depends on how much change it's causing on to your world. And then you have to decide, like, is this kosher for not just you or that other person or those other people, but is it the best for all involved? And that's usually when I just start going, meh. I'm just gonna not be offended and take some time with my cat, take a walk, and then come back going, what's up? You know, nothing, everything's groovy, everything's fine. Is that the right thing to do? Well, if you're not able to speak without not being understood, is there any other option? My brain. This is the things that are bringing up in me. As I read this, what's it bringing up in you? Please comment. I'd love to know. I'd love to share this experience with you, whoever you are. Let's help each other out, eh? Hopefully that's what's going on here. Let's see. Moving on. The process of forgiveness is the process of freeing oneself from internal suffering. But forgiveness is not just a selfish pursuit of personal happiness for addicts. It is a necessity for our recovery. If we don't forgive, we will never maintain abstinence. I forgave my family, myself, and my ex-husband. I guess that's very true. That's why I must be doing as well as I'm doing. I testify! Okay, so the great thing is that this is not, but forgiveness is not just a selfish pursuit of personal happiness for addicts. It is a necessity for our recovery. If we don't forgive, we will never maintain abstinence. Resentment will lead to relapse over and over again and again. The great thing is that this not only leads to healing in ourselves, it elevates suffering in the world. As each one of us frees ourselves from resentment that causes suffering, we simultaneously relieve our friends, family, and community of the burden of our unhappiness and the wreckage of our addictions. This is not a philosophical proposal. It is a verified and practical truth. Through our suffering and lack of forgiveness, we tend to do all kinds of harmful, hurtful things. We close ourselves off from love out of fear of further pains or betrayals. To forgive may leave us feeling vulnerable. Yes, it will. But you will come to see that it is perfectly safe, even liberating, to be vulnerable. I can testify for that too. For me personally, as a person of faith, when I am in allowance of that vulnerability, it's like, it doesn't feel anymore like flying off a cliff, throwing myself off a cliff anymore. It feels like flying in the arms of an angel. A common feeling, at least it does, like 89% of the time. A common feeling among many of us who have felt injured by others is that forgiveness is a gift that the offender has not earned. Yet, does our lack of forgiveness really punish them, or does it just make our hearts hard and our lives unpleasant? Truth. If forgiveness is a gift to others or to oneself, is forgiveness a gift to others or onto oneself? When it comes to forgiving ourselves, we are both the giver and the recipient of the gift. We are struck with ourselves for a life. We are stuck with ourselves for a lifetime. So we might as well find the best way of understanding and accepting the pains of the past. It is in our best interest and the most beneficial thing we can do for others too, to meet ourselves with compassion rather than resentment. Though this sounds simple and straightforward, forgiving oneself is often the most difficult and most important works of one's lifetime, especially if you're in denial. It helps if we investigate our minds or in complete ego. Is it the same thing or somewhere in between? It helps if we investigate our mind's tendency to judge and criticize ourselves, paying special attention to any feeling of unworthiness or self-hatred. Very important. It can bring a friendly awareness to our mind's fears and resentments. We may discover that our minds are actually just trying to protect us from further harm. The barrage of fears and insecurities may be a psychological defense system, an attempt to avoid future harm, a confused attempt, of course, because resentment and anger toward oneself never led to happiness. But if we can understand and accept that we have been confused, We may find it easier to begin to meet ourselves with mercy and forgiveness, responding to the judging mind with the kind of gentle patience and understanding that we would show a sick and confused friend. While some resentments seem to vanish forever, others certainly come and go. The most important thing to remember is that we must live in the present, and if in the present moment we are still holding on to old wounds and betrayals, it is in this moment that forgiveness is called for. The experience of forgiveness may be temporary, more may be revealed. If and when that happens, we have the tools to forgive again and again, or as the Bible says, 70 times, 70 times. The truth is, the experience of forgiveness is a momentary release. We don't and can't forgive forever. Instead, we forgive only for the present moment. I like that. This is both good news and bad. The good part is that you can stop judging yourself for the inability to completely and absolutely let go of resentments once and for all. We forgive it one moment and get resentful again in the next. It is not a failure to forgive. It is just a failure to understand impertinence. The bad news is that forgiveness is not something that will ever be done with. It is the ongoing aspect of our lives, and it necessitates a vigilant practice of learning to let go and living in the present. Now we're moving on to number 6, which is intention. But first, kitty break. Kitty break. Oh, you don't want to dance? She's like, no, I just want to sleep. Go ahead, mamas. We ready for intention? Here we go. Intention. We renounce greed, hatred, and delusion. Delusion. D-E-L-U-S-I-O-N. We train our minds to meet all pain with compassion and all pleasure with non-attached appreciation. We cultivate generous, kind, and compassionate wishes for all living beings. We practice honesty and humility and live with integrity. I'm going to add this little prayer here to the beginning of my daily meditative prayers. That was great. Let me do it again. We renounce greed, hatred, and delusion. We train our minds to meet all pain with compassion and all pleasure with non-attached appreciation. We cultivate generous, kind, and compassionate wishes for all living beings. We practice honesty and humility and live with integrity. We intend to meet all pain with compassion. Moving on to the rest of the book here. We intend to meet all pain with compassion and all pleasure with non-attached appreciation. To be generous and kind to all living beings. To be honest and humble. To live with integrity and to practice non-harming. Our intentions are always based on our understanding. Therefore, it is important, first and foremost, to understand cause and effect. Wise intention means that we take full responsibility for all our actions, and the consequences of our actions. We're taking on other people's actions in this, or their beliefs in you. In this factor of the path, we are asked to intentionally align our actions with kindness, compassion, generosity, forgiveness, and understanding. Intentions. Intentions are the goals or aims of our actions. They are the reasons behind our actions. So you have to have time to think about it, if not before, which is of course prime, after. And don't let anybody push you in the middle of that. It'll come to you when it comes to you, provided you at least give yourself the space to ask yourself, why did I do that? Or why am I responding in this way? It's okay if you don't have that answer like whenever somebody else may want it. It's important to ask yourself those questions. And keep asking, Kina, until it comes to you. That's what's important. Remember that. Wise intentions means that we take full responsibility for our actions and the consequences of our actions. In this factor of the path, we are asked to intentionally align our actions with kindness, compassion, generosity, forgiveness, and understanding. Start with doing that for yourself. You can't give it to somebody else if you're not even doing it to yourself, for yourself. Intentions. Intentions are the goals or aims of our actions. They are the reasons behind our actions. Having learned the truths of existence, we must now align our thoughts and intentions towards the goal of recovery and freedom from suffering. This consists of redirecting our thoughts and intentions from the negative karma-producing intentions like greed, hatred, and delusion to the positive intentions of kindness, compassion, generosity, forgiveness, appreciation, and understanding. In order to recover, we must aim our life's energy and actions towards being free from all forms of hatred, ill will, aversion, oh, that's a good one, aversion, and wishing harm to ourselves and others. We must also be free from the greed for pleasure, which is clearly the cause of much of our addictions. Greed is desire out of control. Wow, I never heard of that as a definition of greed. Greed is desire out of control. Our intention doesn't need to be free from desire itself, thank God, but only free from the extremes of craving, clinging, attachment, and greed. Wanting something is not a problem, but having to have something is. It is a setup for suffering. That needs to be on a bumper sticker. Wanting something is not a problem, but having to have something is a setup for suffering. Intention plays a central role in the spiritual life. All our volitional actions come from our intentions. The actions that are at the heart of karma, which literally means action. Did you know that? The actions that are at the heart of karma, which literally means action. Most of us misunderstand karma. We think that it refers to the result. I did. Something bad happens and we say, that was my karma, or that was her karma. Actually, karma is action itself. Well, how did we do there? I had no idea. Yay, new stuff. The result is the karmic fruit. Okay, so karma is action itself. The result is the karmic fruit. Okay? Kina? She's so cute. Okay. Most of us misunderstand karma. We think that it refers to the result, something bad that happened, and we say, that was my karma, that was her karma. Actually, karma is action itself. The result is the karmic fruit, and that karmic fruit, the outcome of an action, comes from our intention, not the act itself. That was a bit of a riddle. Let's do that again. Actually, karma is action itself. The result is the karmic fruit, and that karmic fruit, the outcome of an action, comes from our intention, not the act itself. So it all comes back down to intention. What's your heart up to? Did you ask your heart if that was a good or a bad choice before you did it? Maybe you should. Your heart intentions will always be gold. If you're coming from your heart, you'll be okay. For instance, if we accidentally kill an insect by walking down the street, there is no negative karma created because it is not our intention to kill. But when we volitionally kill insects because we are afraid of them or because we hate them, we commit an intentional act, which bears a negative karmic fruit. What if I really enjoy killing flies because they bug the fuck out of me? Yeah, I don't like flies. Sorry, flies. Which bears a negative. If somebody could tell me what the positive consequences of flies in our existence is in the comments, that'd be good. Maybe I won't hate them. I never heard anything good about flies. Have you? This is an important distinction. Karmic results come from our positive or negative intentions, not from the actions themselves. From this perspective, a person can even harm or take a human life accidentally, that is, without negative intention, and not have karmic repercussions. There is much confusion about this. In our culture, for instance, there is the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I hate that sentence. From a Buddhist perspective, however, this, of course, cannot be true. Maybe that's why I hate it, because it's a lie. But the saying comes from the commonly used excuse, this wasn't my intention, or I had only good intentions, but it was a real mess anyway. This is like the addict who hurts everyone around him or her and then says, it wasn't my intention. It may be true that the intention was not maliciously hurtful, but if we look at the motivations and intentions, they were certainly not wise or skillful. The intention of the addict is usually a selfish craving for pleasure or to escape pain. From the intention of self-serving, often fear-based and dishonest actions come all the harm that the addict causes. So he or she is fully responsible for all the intentional actions that have resulted in harming others. And we're at 21 minutes, so we'll leave it at that. I will just put a cute little tiny dot so we know where we are. We are on page 43. I love you guys. Namaste. More later.